The Caliph corridor looked wrong. Commander Dara Hollis had been staring at the debris field on the holotank for 6 hours and she still couldn't name what was bothering her. She just knew something was. Debris fields were messy things, rock and dead metal tumbling in every direction, no logic to them, no pattern. This one had a pattern. She couldn't prove it. She couldn't point to a single piece of evidence that would hold up in a briefing room. She just felt it the way old sailors felt weather in their knees. She kept her mouth shut. The Ardmore moved with the rest of Vanguard 14 through the corridor's entry point, 12 ships in standard transit formation, running quiet. Around her, the bridge crew worked their stations like it was any other transit. Lieutenant Calmoro sat at the navigation console reading coordinates out loud to himself in a low murmur, not because he needed to, but because he always did when his nerves were up. She had never told him she noticed. She never would. Debris density is increasing, said Ensign Priya Nair from the sensor station. She said it like a question, even though it wasn't one. Log it, Dara said. Priya logged it. She also ran a distribution analysis on her secondary screen, quiet and unsanctioned, because she had noticed the same thing Dara had noticed and she didn't know what to do with it either. Down in the Ardmore's launch bay, Sergeant Rudy Vance was losing an argument about protein rations. The beef one is objectively worse, said Corporal Dennis Lau. You have no working taste buds, Rudy said, leaning Mildred, his rifle, named after his grandmother, worn smooth at the grip from a decade of handling, against the bay wall. The beef one has character. It tastes like sadness. All food in space tastes like sadness. At least the beef one commits to it. Lau opened his mouth to respond and the world ended. It didn't end loudly. That was the thing Dara would remember later, in the moments she let herself remember it. The EMP web fired and the sound was nothing, a hiss, like air leaving a room, and then 6 ships in Vanguard 14 went dark. Not damaged. Not hit. Just dark, like someone had flicked a switch. 3 more followed in the next 4 seconds. Running lights gone. Engine signatures gone. Silent as stone. On the Ardmore's bridge, half the screens went to static. Then the Varek warships came out of the dark. They emerged from concealment positions throughout the debris field, 40 of them, enormous and angular, arranged in overlapping firing arcs that covered every possible vector of escape. They had been waiting. For how long, Dara couldn't know. Long enough. The formation closed around Vanguard 14 the way a hand closes around a fly. Cal had stopped murmuring coordinates. He was very still. Count them, Dara said. I'm counting, Priya said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were steady. Everything about her was steady in a way that Dara filed away and appreciated. 40, Priya said. 37 active. 3 holding outer position. 40 to 12. Except it wasn't 12 anymore. 9 of the 12 were dark. It was 40 to 3. A transmission came through on the main channel. It was in English, perfect, unaccented, studied English, and it was a surrender demand. The Varek commander had translated it himself. He had gotten the grammar exactly right. He had clearly done his homework, and his homework told him that at this point in the engagement the species he was fighting would be calculating survival odds and deciding to yield. Dara turned to Cal, get me firing solutions on the sensor satellites. The ones generating the dampening field. Cal turned in his seat and looked at her. Commander. Those satellites are inside the Varek formation. I know where they are. Firing on them we'd have to shoot through the formation to reach them. I know. He looked at her for another second. Then he turned back to his console and started working. Priya's voice came from the sensor station, quiet. Commander. I'm picking up a narrowband transmission. One of the dark ships. Put it through. The sound that came through the bridge speakers was not a distress call. It was not a tactical report. It was voices, multiple voices, men and women together, singing. An old hymn, the kind that belonged in a wooden church somewhere with bad air conditioning and good acoustics. The signal was faint, running on emergency batteries, broadcast in the clear because whoever was running it had decided that if they were going to go dark they were going to do it making noise. Rudy heard it in the launch bay through the ship-wide feed. He recognized the him. He didn't say anything. He just stopped arguing about protein rations. He picked up Mildred from the wall and checked the chamber the way he always did when he needed something to do with his hands. Lau watched him and didn't say anything either. On the Ardmore's bridge, Dara stood with her hands behind her back, watching the holotank, listening to the hymn until it faded. The Varec transmission was still open, waiting for her answer. She didn't give one. What she gave instead was this: she opened the fleet channel, the 3 ships that still had working comms, and she spoke in the flat, unhurried voice she used when the situation was past the point of inflection and into the point of action. All ships, this is Hollis. We are not retreating. We are reorienting. She paused. There is a difference. Cal looked up from his console. He had his firing solutions. His hands had stopped shaking, which surprised him. He thought about it for a second and decided it was because she had used the word reorienting instead of surviving. Surviving meant you were already losing. Reorienting meant you were choosing a new direction. It was a small thing. It was not a small thing. Outside, the Varec formation held its closing arc, 40 warships arranged in the geometry of certainty. Their commander had done this 17 times. He had the data. He had the formation. He had the math. He had fired an EMP web that knocked out 9 human ships in under 10 seconds. He was waiting for the last 3 to make the only rational choice. Dara looked at the holotank. She looked at the debris field around them, the rotating rock and dead metal, the long shadows, the places where a ship could move and be hard to track. She looked at the distances. She ran numbers in her head that she had never been taught to run because the scenario she was running them for didn't exist in any training manual she had ever read. Then she told Cal where she wanted to go. He plotted it. He didn't question it. He understood, just barely, what she was doing with the debris field, and the part he didn't understand he trusted. The Ardmore moved. The other 2 ships moved with her. They didn't move toward the Varec formation. They didn't move away from it. They moved sideways, into the thickest section of the debris field, where the rocks were biggest and the shadows were deepest, and the Varec targeting systems were going to have a very bad time. In the Varec command ship, Uzi Kareth watched this on his screens. He ran it through 3 tactical models. None of them returned a matching result. The humans had moved into terrain his trap wasn't built for. He ran it through 3 more models. Same result. He looked at the debris field. He looked at where the humans had gone. For the first time in 200 combined years of command experience, he felt the faint, unwelcome sensation of a variable he had not accounted for. He did not yet know what to do with it. The hymn, somewhere, had stopped. The debris field turned slowly in the dark, indifferent, enormous, full of shadows. The 3 human ships disappeared into it. Inside the debris field, the Ardmore moved like a man walking through a dark house he had never been in before, carefully, slowly, waiting for his shin to find the furniture. Cal was navigating by feel and math, calling out rock sizes and drift speeds while Priya fed him sensor reads every 30 seconds. The screens were still half-static from the EMP. The long-range systems were down. What they had was short-range and unreliable and held together by Priya's willingness to just keep watching and Cal's willingness to just keep talking. Big one, 11 o'clock, Cal said. Maybe 60 meters. Moving at, Priya. 4 meters per second, angular drift left. Going right of it. He adjusted the heading. The Ardmore slid right. The rock passed close enough that Dara could have counted the craters on it if the lights were better. She wasn't watching the rocks. She was watching the Varec formation on the holotank, what was left of the display, anyway. Fuzzy shapes. Rough positions. Enough. She was thinking about the sensor-dampening satellites. 6 of them, seated through the corridor at intervals, generating the field that had shut down 9 of her ships. They were also, she had noticed, inside the Varec formation's inner perimeter. Which meant the Varec ships were operating inside the dampening field too. They had calibrated their own systems to compensate for it. That compensation had a cost. She was working out what the cost was. Priya's voice came from the sensor station. Commander. The dampening field is affecting Varec short-range sensors inside the debris field. Their targeting systems are losing resolution on us. Dara looked at her. They built the trap in open space, Priya said. It still came out like a question. The field works differently in here. More interference from the rock. So they blinded us and themselves. In here, yes. Dara looked back at the hollow tank. Then we stay in here. From the far end of the bridge, Dr. Leon Fassbender cleared his throat. He had been sitting at an auxiliary console this whole time, running analysis, largely forgotten by everyone including Dara. He had the look of a man who had something to say and was aware it was probably not the right time and was going to say it anyway. The Varek have never lost a ship in a corridor ambush, he said. In their entire recorded tactical history. 17 engagements. 0 losses. Cal turned in his chair. Is that supposed to help? It tells us they have never had to adapt to an ambush going wrong, Leon said. Which means they have no adaptive protocol. Which means every second this engagement does not go according to their model, they are generating new orders from scratch, with no training for it. He paused. That is significant. Dara didn't look at him. Yes, she said. It is. She opened the fleet channel. Ardmore to Kingfisher. Ardmore to Sable. Sound off. 2 voices came back. Both ships were in the field. Both were intact. The Kingfisher had lost her forward guns but her engines were fine. The Sable was fully operational. Dara did the inventory in her head. 3 ships, 2 of them with weapons, 1 partially. Against 37 Varek warships that couldn't see them clearly in the debris field. Not good odds. Still odds. Odds were enough to work with. She was in the middle of laying out a harassing pattern, hit from inside the field, fall back, move, hit again, when Rudy's comm clicked on. Hollis. She knew his voice. She also knew the particular tone that meant he had done something or was about to do something that had not been approved by anyone above his rank. Vance. We're going shopping. A pause. Shopping, she said. There's a disabled Varek ship at grid 47. About 300 meters into the field. Their engines are dark. We checked their power signature, they're running on emergency backup only. Can't maneuver. Can't fire. And we want to go see what they've got inside. In any other situation, in a training scenario, in a briefing room, in any context where she had time to think about regulations, she would have said no. She would have said it clearly and moved on. This was not any of those situations. She had 3 ships, partial weapons, and a Varek formation that was currently reconfiguring itself for an assault on the debris field. How many? She said. 5 of us. Suits. Eva. Quick. Define quick. 15 minutes. She thought about it for 4 seconds. In those 4 seconds she ran the risk against the possible gain and she landed where she always landed when the numbers didn't work in her favor, on the side of doing something rather than nothing, because nothing had a guaranteed outcome and something had a chance. Go, she said. Thank you, Commander. Don't thank me. Get back in 15. The channel clicked off. On the holotank, the Varek formation was moving. They were sending a probe, 2 ships, angling into the debris field's edge, testing sight lines. They were going to find a way in. It was a matter of time. Cal had pulled up the Varek probe ships on his firing console. I've got solutions on both of them. Hold. Commander. Hold, Cal. Let them come in a little further. He held. His jaw was tight. He held. The 2 Varek ships crept deeper into the field's outer edge. Their formations had been perfect in open space. In here, moving around rocks, they were slower. Less certain. The geometry they had trained for didn't exist in here. They were improvising too, just worse at it. Dara waited until the lead ship cleared a large asteroid and had no obvious cover for 3 seconds. Now. Cal fired. 1 shot. Clean. The Varek ship's port engine section opened up like a cracked egg. The ship listed, lost thrust, began to drift. The second Varek ship pulled back fast, retreating to the field's edge. She didn't fire on the retreating ship. She let it go back and report. Leon was watching this from his console. He was also watching the Varec formation's response, the way the whole outer arc tightened when the probe ship was hit, the half-second lag before the repositioning orders came through. They're slow to adapt, he said, not to anyone in particular. Each new decision requires full command authorization. No decentralized response. Yuzi Kareth is controlling everything himself. Priya had noticed the same thing. One brain, she said. Yes. One very good brain. With no practice running a battle that isn't working. Dara was already thinking about what that meant. One brain at the top of 40 warships, generating orders in real time for a situation he had never trained for. Every second she kept this fight unpredictable, that brain was working harder. And brains, however good, got tired. They also got fixed on the wrong problem if you gave them enough wrong problems to look at. She needed to give Yuzi Kareth something to look at. She opened the channel to Kingfisher. I need you to move to grid 8-2 and make noise. Weapons hot. I don't care if you hit anything. I care that they see you. Kingfisher's commander, a steadyman named Bill Garrett whom Dara had known for 6 years, responded without hesitation. Understood. Sable, with me. We're going to grid 4-9. Copy. The Ardmore and the Sable moved deeper. Kingfisher went loud at grid 8-2, firing into the outer formation, pulling eyes. 40 warships tracking Kingfisher. 2 ships moving quietly in the dark. Rudy's comm clicked on, 11 minutes into the 15. Hollis. You're going to want to hear this. She could hear something in his voice that she hadn't heard before. Not fear. Something adjacent to it. The voice a man uses when he is looking at something big enough that he needs a second to decide what to do with it. Talk, she said. They've got a siege cannon in here. Planetary grade. The kind they use to crack moons. Silence on the bridge. Even Cal stopped moving. And, Dara said. I think I can fire it. She closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. She opened them. How big is the blast radius, Rudy? He told her. She told him to give everyone in a very large area time to move. He said he understood. She believed him. She opened the fleet channel and started moving ships. Outside, the debris field turned slowly in the dark, full of rocks and shadows and things that were about to happen. Yuzi Kareth was still watching. Still generating orders. Still one step behind, getting from the Ardmore's launch bay to a disabled Varec warship 300 meters through open vacuum inside a debris field was not the hardest thing Rudy Vance had ever done. It was in the top 5. The EVA suits were good. The magnetic boot clamps were good. The problem was the debris field itself, which did not care about their schedule or their safety margins. Rocks moved at their own pace in their own directions, and the team had to stop twice, once flat against a floating chunk of dead metal, once in the open, holding still and trusting their suit profiles were small enough to not matter, while a piece of asteroid the size of a school bus drifted past close enough to feel. Rudy went first. He always went first. Not because he was ordered to. Because standing at the back while someone else walked into the dark was not something he had ever been wired for. Behind him, Lau, then Specialist Karen Webb, then Corporal Pete Drucker, then Private First Class Danny Sorrell. All of them quiet on the comm. The kind of quiet that happened when people had done the math and decided not to say it out loud. The Varec ship resolved out of the dark slowly. It was bigger up close, maybe twice the size of the Ardmore, angular and dark, with a hull texture that reminded Rudy of dried bone. Its running lights were dead. One side was crumpled inward where something had caught it during the initial positioning, not human fire, just debris impact, bad luck, the field doing what the field did. They found a maintenance hatch on the lower hull. Varec design was alien enough that it took 4 minutes to figure out how to open it. Webb figured it out. She had a gift for mechanisms that Rudy had never understood and had always been grateful for. Inside, dark and cold, and the particular silence of a ship running on almost nothing. The Varec crew were alive. Rudy found the first one around the second corridor, a Varec soldier, suited, conscious, sitting against the wall with what looked like a broken arm. The creature was roughly humanoid. Taller. Narrower through the chest. Eyes that caught the light of Rudy's helmet lamp and reflected it back flat and gold, like an owl's eyes. It looked at him. He looked at it. His standing orders covered a number of things. What to do when you found living enemy personnel on a disabled ship inside an active engagement was not technically one of them. The manual had opinions. Rudy had opinions too, and his were louder. "You're going to stay right there," he said, which the Varek almost certainly could not understand. He patted the air in what he hoped communicated stay and not something culturally catastrophic. The Varek did not move. Whether this was understanding or injury or pure confusion, Rudy couldn't tell. He went through the ship. Found 3 more crew, all incapacitated in varying degrees. Left Webb and Drucker to watch them. Took Lau and Sorel deeper. The main weapons bay was in the ship's belly. They found it through a process of opening every door until one of them opened onto something vast and cold and humming very faintly at a frequency that Rudy felt in his back teeth. The cannon was enormous. It took up almost the entire bay. It was matte black and constructed in a way that looked less like engineering and more like something grown, layered and curved, with conduit lines running along it like veins. It pointed toward the bow. It was clearly designed to fire forward, through the ship's reinforced nose section, at targets considerably farther away and considerably more stationary than warships in a debris field. Rudy stood in front of it for a long moment. "Mildred," he said, he was talking to his rifle, which was slung on his back, "I think we found her big sister." Lau was already pulling up a portable interface, trying to read the power state. "It's on emergency charge. 18%. That's, Sarge, the charge requirements for a weapon this size. It's almost there, but the draw is going to be. Will it fire?" Lau looked at the numbers. Looked at Rudy. "Once. Maybe." Priya's voice came through the comm from the Ardmore, careful and measured. "Sergeant Vance. That cannon has a blast radius that will take out anything within 400 meters that isn't heavily shielded." "I know. Our ships are." "I know, Priya. I'm going to need everyone to move." Silence on the line. Rudy stood there looking at the cannon and thinking about what it meant to fire it. The blast radius was real. The math was real. In a closed debris field, the shock wave from a planetary siege weapon would go in every direction, turn every rock in range into shrapnel, and hit anything that wasn't far enough away. He thought about the 9 dark ships somewhere in this field. Some of them had people alive on them, running emergency power, singing hymns. He thought about Danny Sorel, standing behind him, 22 years old and from a town in Georgia so small it didn't have a traffic light. He thought about what the Varek formation was going to do in the next 20 minutes if nobody did something about it. "I need targeting data," he said. "Biggest ship in the outer formation. Wherever the command signature is strongest." Priya found it in 40 seconds. He plugged the coordinates into the Varek interface. Webb had figured out enough of the translation layer to make it work, barely, one wrong keystroke from catastrophic misfire, and he set the aim. He opened the channel to Dara. "How long do you need?" he said. She gave him a number. He told her to add 2 minutes. He waited while the fleet moved. He could feel the ship vibrating faintly under his boots as Lau pushed the cannon's charge through its final cycle. He watched Sorel check the hatch. Watched Lau work. He thought about his grandmother, who had never left Kentucky but had opinions about everything beyond it. He thought she would have had a lot to say about this particular situation. He thought she would have said it without raising her voice, which was the most intimidating way to have opinions. He thought about the men whose ship they were standing in, hurt and sitting against a wall in the corridor, doing nothing. Whatever else the Varek were, that one had not fought when he could have reached for something and tried. Rudy had noted that. He did not know yet what to do with it. "Ready," Lau said. Rudy took one breath. He fired. The cannon made almost no sound. That was the thing. For something that size, there should have been noise, a roar, a crack, something. Instead there was a deep vibration that started in the ship's bones and moved up through the deck and through the soles of Rudy's boots and into his spine, and then the bay lit up white, and then the wall blew out. The cannon fired through the bow section exactly as designed. The beam hit the debris field's outer edge and the debris field responded the only way it could, catastrophically. Rock became projectile. Everything in range became shrapnel. The nearest Varric warship took the beam directly in its starboard side and opened up like a wound, and the explosion from the chip added to the chain, and the chain went through the outer arc of the Varric formation like something biblical. Rudy was already moving. They all were. Through the ship, back to the hatch, out into open vacuum, moving fast. The shock wave moved through the field as vibration first, not sound. There was no sound in space, but a pressure, a push, transmitted through debris, 100 small impacts that hit them in their suits like being caught in a hard rain. They got to the Ardmore's hull with 45 seconds to spare. Rudy came through the launch bay hatch last, the way he always did, and he stood for a moment in the bay while the others got their helmets off, and he unclipped Mildred from his back very carefully and leaned her against the wall. He sat down on a crate. Lau sat next to him. Webb across from him. Drucker against the far wall. Sorel did not sit down. Rudy had known before they left. He thought Sorel had known too. The gap between where they were and where the hatch was had been 45 seconds of vacuum travel, and Sorel had started from further back. Just the wrong distance at the wrong moment, the shock wave arriving 2 seconds early against the prediction. Nobody said anything. The bay was very quiet. Dara's voice came through the shipwide a minute later. She said what she needed to say about the engagement, about the Varric formation state, about what happened next. Rudy listened. He heard all of it. He filed it. He looked at Mildred leaning against the wall. He did not move for a long time. UZ Kareth had 32 tactical models running at the same time. This was not unusual for a Varric command mind. His species had evolved with layered cognition, the ability to run parallel calculations, weigh multiple outcomes, and manage complex battlefield information without losing resolution on any individual thread. It was why the Dominion produced the finest fleet commanders in the known cluster. It was why UZ Kareth had been given 40 warships and the most carefully designed ambush in a generation. All 32 models were degrading. Not failing. Not wrong. Degrading. Each time the humans did something, the models updated. Each update generated a new variable. Each new variable produced an outcome that required another update. He had lost 4 ships, 3 to the blast that had come from somewhere inside the debris field, using a weapon signature his analysts could not immediately identify, and 1 to the human ship that had been making aggressive passes at his formation's edge. A 5th ship was disabled and non-responsive. He ran the numbers again. He was still winning. On paper, he was winning substantially. 35 operational Varric warships against 3 human ships that had no right to still be moving. The math was not complicated. The math was also not the problem. The problem was the variable he couldn't model, the rate at which the humans were generating new actions. Every engagement he had ever commanded had a rhythm. Both sides had a rhythm. You could read the rhythm. You could predict the next beat. These humans had no rhythm. They did not fight in a way that produced a next beat. They fought the way water moved, finding the available space and going there, and the space they found was always somewhere his models hadn't assigned weight to. He was also missing something. He could feel it the way you feel a missing tooth, not the thing itself but the absence of it. Something in the engagement's shape was not adding up, and he did not know what. He opened a channel to the human fleet. The woman answered. Commander Hollis. His intelligence had identified her as the highest-ranking officer in Vanguard 14. She had given him nothing, no panic, no negotiation, no performance of bravery. Just flat pragmatism, every time. It was very difficult to model someone who gave you nothing to model. Commander Hollis, he said in English. He had studied the language himself. He believed in studying the languages of those you intended to fight. It gave you shape. UZ Kareth, she said. She used his name without ceremony. He noted this. Your formation is 3 ships, he said. Mine is 35. The engagement mathematics are not in your favor. I know the math, she said. I am proposing a withdrawal, he said. My ships clear the corridor. Your ships recover your disabled personnel. We end this without further loss. He had done this once before, in 200 years of command. It had been with a species that had fought well against unreasonable odds and deserved the offer. He was not making this offer because he was losing. He was making it because something in this engagement had earned it. Hollis was quiet for a moment. "That call belongs to my admiral," she said. He processed this. His intelligence files on Vanguard 14 listed 12 ships, 3 still functional, under Hollis's command. There was no flag officer in the formation. No flagship-class vessel. He had checked this twice. An admiral commanded from a flagship. There was no flagship. "Where is your admiral?" he said. The answer did not come from Hollis. It came from 22 directions at once. The sensor array lit up along the outer edge of the Caliph corridor, not from inside the debris field, but from the corridor's far end, the wide approach that his positioning had left open because it was too far away to matter. Too far away to be a threat. His models had assigned it a weight of near zero. A reserve force, if one existed, would need at least 4 hours to reach engagement range from that distance. Unless they had been moving for the last 47 minutes. Not at speed. At drift speed, the same passive velocity as floating debris, engines at absolute minimum, heat signatures barely above the rocks around them. His sensors had read them as debris because they were moving like debris. Because someone had decided 47 minutes ago that the sensors would read them that way and had planned accordingly. 22 ships resolved on his screen. Not reserve quality. Full combat ships. Fresh, armed, in formation, coming from the corridor's far end while his entire formation was pointed the other way. A new voice arrived on the channel. Older. Unhurried. The kind of voice that had spent so many years giving difficult orders that it had stopped performing anything around them. "Commander Uzi Kareth," said Admiral Grace Osei. "I understand you were expecting 12 ships." A pause. "We brought 22. Uzi Kareth looked at his display. He ran the new numbers. They took less than a second. He was now bracketed, 3 ships in the debris field behind him, 22 ships in front, his formation caught between them with no clean vector out. The corridor was a choke point. He had chosen it because choke points favored the ambush. He had not considered that the same geography that trapped prey also trapped the trapper, if the prey was creative enough. He ran the 32 models again. 11 of them now returned the same result. He did not look at that result directly. He looked at the other 21. "That is significantly more than 12, he said. "Yes," Osei said. No emotion in it. Just confirmation. Leon, watching the sensor data from the Ardmore's auxiliary console, pulled up his xenobiology file and wrote 3 sentences. He wrote that Uzi Kareth had been given a trap that had become his own prison. He wrote that the genius of the ambush, the corridor, the choke point, the layered formation, was also the mechanism of its failure, because terrain that constrains prey constrains predator equally when the prey refuses to run. He wrote that this was probably not in any Varec tactical literature and would need to be. He saved the file. He went back to watching the screen. The Varec formation was holding. Not moving. 35 ships sitting in a corridor between 2 human forces, waiting for Uzi Kareth's order. Uzi Kareth's order was taking longer than usual to arrive because Uzi Kareth was doing something he had never had to do in 200 years of commanding battles. He was deciding between options that were all bad. His second-in-command appeared on his command screen. Presented the casualty projections for each option. Uzi Kareth looked at them. Set them aside. He looked at the debris field. He thought about what had come out of it. A siege cannon on a ship with 3 living humans inside it and no tactical reason for success that his models could reconstruct. He thought about 9 dark ships with their crews alive, singing in the dark. He thought about the commander who had moved into the debris field instead of away from it, and the admiral who had walked 22 ships across 47 minutes of space at the speed of drifting rocks because she had seen the corridor's geometry and understood it better than he had. He thought about 17 civilizations. He thought about how thin those data files were. He thought, I did not know this was what was inside them. He opened the fleet channel and gave his formation an order. Not surrender. Not withdrawal. Something that was not in the Varec tactical doctrine at all, because it had never needed to be there. He told his ships to hold. Not to fight. Not to negotiate. To hold. He was buying time. For what, he could not exactly say. He was running 32 models and none of them were returning a good outcome, and some small part of his command mind, the part that had spent 200 years learning what defeat looked like in other species, was beginning to understand what he was looking at. He was looking at something that did not break. He had never had to decide what to do with something that did not break. He had always assumed that given enough force, everything broke. It was a reasonable assumption. It had been correct 17 times. He was now on the 18th. Outside, the corridor sat still. Rocks drifted. The human ships held their positions, waiting. Caritha's formation held its position, waiting. The debris field turned slowly, full of dark ships and dead metal, and, somewhere inside it, 3 humans in a launch bay who were not speaking. Both sides were waiting for the other to decide what happened next. Carith ran the models one more time. 11 of them returned the result he had been avoiding. He looked at it directly. He put his orders aside. He picked up the channel and called Osei back. What Carith said to Grace Osei was short. He told her he was prepared to discuss terms of cessation. He used that word, cessation, not surrender, not defeat, and Osei let it stand because she understood that it was the same thing said in the only way a commander who had never lost could say it without his formation falling apart around him. The formation was watching. His captains were on open channel. A word mattered. She had used words carefully for 40 years. She gave him that one. What he asked for was time to withdraw. His formation out the far end of the corridor. The human fleet holds position. Clean lines. No pursuit. Osei told him she would discuss it with her commanders. She did not discuss it with her commanders. She sat in her chair on the Relentless and thought about it herself, because that was what an admiral did, absorbed the weight of the decision so that no one else had to carry it. She thought about the 9 dark ships in the debris field. The ones with crews alive inside them, no power, no heat, running out of time. She thought about what time to withdraw meant when her people were dying in the dark while 40 Varek ships filed slowly out of a corridor. She thought about the 47 minutes she had spent moving 22 ships at drift speed through the approach, and what that silence had meant, and what had been purchased with it. She opened a channel to Dara. Commander Hollis. Status on dark ships. Dara's voice came back level. 6 confirmed with living crew on board. 2 with life support failing. We need to get to them inside 90 minutes. Can we reach them if the Varek formation is in transit? No. 90 minutes. Varek transit out of the corridor at minimum speed was 2 hours. She opened the channel back to Carith. I cannot hold my forces while my people die in the debris field, she said. I need immediate access to the dark ships. My ships go in now. Your ships hold. Silence on the Varek line. Caritha's 32 models had not planned for this either. He looked at his formation. He looked at the debris field. He gave the order he had never given, his ships hold in place while human vessels moved freely in range of them. It was not a small thing. The captains received it and sat with it and held, because he had told them to, and because they trusted him, and because they did not have a better idea. The rescue went in immediately. Every shuttle and EVA team the human fleet could deploy went into the debris field at once. Dara coordinated from the Ardmore, and Cal ran logistics on the dark ship's positions, and Priya tracked life support numbers in real time on her screen with the kind of focus that shut out everything else. They got to the first ship in 11 minutes. The crew was in bad shape, cold, low oxygen, 2 with injuries, but alive. The second ship in 17 minutes. Third in 22. The fourth ship's life support had already failed on one section. They lost 2 people there. Dara heard the number. She put it in the back of her mind where she kept things that would need to be taken out later, examined properly, given the full weight they deserved. Not now. Later. On the 5th ship, the rescue team found something they did not expect. The crew was conscious, alert, and had spent the last several hours repairing their own maneuvering systems using components cannibalized from non-essential systems. The ship could not fight. It could move. The engineer who had done it was a 26-year-old woman named Carol Trent from Colorado who had graduated 3rd in her class and had apparently decided that sitting in the dark was not something she was going to do. When the rescue shuttle arrived, she was still working. I almost had propulsion back, she said. The shuttle crew stared at her. I almost had it, she said again. She got in the shuttle. She kept the schematics she had sketched in the dark and took them with her. The sixth dark ship was beyond reach. By the time they got to it, the life support had been gone for too long. The rescue team came back without anyone. Dara logged it. The number in the back of her mind got heavier. When the last shuttle returned, Osei opened the channel to UZ Kareth. My people are clear, she said. Another silence. Commander UZ Kareth, she said. I want to be honest with you about what comes next. She told him plainly. His formation was bracketed. The geometry of the corridor was the same geometry he had chosen as his trap, and it worked the same way in reverse. If his ships attempted transit, the human fleet would engage from both ends before the formation cleared the corridor. If his ships stayed, they remained bracketed indefinitely. If he attempted to break through the debris field, the field itself was the problem. His ships were not calibrated for it, and he had already seen what the debris field produced when it was used as a weapon. She was not threatening. She was describing. I am offering you one option, she said. Surrender. Full. Your ships stand down, your crews are treated appropriately, the matter is handled through whatever channels exist between our governments. UZ Kareth listened. He had known since the models shifted. He had known since the 22 ships appeared at the corridor's far end and the geometry of his own trap closed around him. He had spent the intervening time running models he already knew the answers to because running models was the thing he did when there was nothing left to decide except the moment of deciding. He looked at his formation. 35 ships. Most of them untouched. His captains, capable and loyal, waiting for his word. He thought about the Varek Dominion and its 17 victories and its 200-year doctrine and the assumption, embedded so deep it had become invisible, that all species broke under sufficient force. He thought, the assumption was wrong. He thought, that matters more than this battle. He told his formation to stand down. 35 Varek warships, one by one, went to minimal power. Weapons offline. Shields lowered. The corridor, which had been full of tension for the last several hours, went quiet in a new way. Not the quiet of a trap. The quiet of an ending. UZ Kareth opened a channel on his own, not to Osei, not to Dara, but to the open fleet frequency. He spoke one sentence in Varek. He closed the channel. Leon had his translation software running. The translation arrived 7 hours later, because the software needed that long to handle the particular grammatical construction UZ Kareth had used. The sentence was, I did not know you were the kind of thing that refused to break. Then UZ Kareth scuttled his own ship. Clean. Deliberate. The command ship's reactor went to zero from the inside. It happened fast. There was no explosion. The ship just went dark and still, drifting, and UZ Kareth was not there anymore. On the bridge of the Ardmore, Cal looked at the dark shape on the holotank. He did not say anything. He looked at it for a moment and then he looked away and kept working, because there was still work to do. The Relentless moved into the corridor and began the process of collecting Varek ships and their crews. It was a long process. Dara handed that part off to Osei's people and turned her attention back to the Ardmore, to the crew, to the ship, to the list of things that needed doing now that the things needing doing now had changed in nature. She walked the ship. She walked the launch bay last. Rudy was there. Sitting on a crate. Mildred leaned against the wall next to him. He was not sleeping. He was just sitting in the way a man sits when sitting is the only thing left. She sat down next to him on the crate. The metal was cold through her uniform. The viewport above the bay door showed stars, which looked the same as they had at the start of all of this, which was the thing about stars, they did not care, and there was something almost comforting about that, the permanence of their indifference. Neither of them spoke for a while. On the Relentless, Grace Osei returned to her command chair. She opened her desk drawer. She took out paper and a pen. Real paper. She had carried it on every ship she had ever commanded for 30 years. She sat for a moment with the pen in her hand, not writing yet, just thinking about names and the weight they carried and the specific crime of reducing a person to a line in a report. Then she began to write. One letter for each name. Different words for each because they were different people and she had known them, and the least she could do was remember the difference. She did not dictate. She did not type. She wrote each letter by hand until she had written the last one, and then she sat back and did not say anything to anyone for a very long time. Somewhere far away, in a Varec facility that received combat data from the field, a coordinator opened the incoming file from the Caliph corridor. The file was enormous. The coordinator looked at the outcome field. Looked at the battle data. Pulled up the files from 17 previous corridor engagements. All thin. All short. All clean. The Caliph file was 400 times larger than all 17 combined. Just the data of what the humans had done after the EMP fired. The coordinator attached one note and forwarded it up the chain. The note said, "Do not engage this species again until we understand what we are looking at." The file moved up through the chain. Nobody replied. Nobody, in the entire Dominion, knew yet that understanding was not something they were going to arrive at. Not because the data wasn't there. Because the data described something that only made sense once you accepted the premise, and the premise was the part they couldn't get to, the part where a species decides, collectively and without a single coordinating order, that breaking is simply not one of the options. In the Ardmore's launch bay, Dara finally said something. "We figured it out." Rudy looked at her. He didn't answer. He looked back at the stars through the viewport. She didn't explain what she meant. She didn't need to.